This week I've been dealing with street children and the issues they face whilst out on the street in the local town. And it's a difficult subject to talk about. These boys and girls are not only homeless and hungry, not only have no one to love them, nowhere to sleep, no food in their bellies, often covered in various different types of fungal infections and stuff because of lack of hygiene. Get involved with drugs, but unbelievably, there's even worse things happen to these boys and girls. This week I had to sit and listen to a child tell me that he had been raped by men in the town. It became such a frequent and regular occurrence that it was no longer abuse and rape to him, it was something that happens. So instead of them having to find him, he would go to where this was going on, to be abused. Because that was his physical contact in life, I guess. That was his routine. The young children who were hitting the streets, these men will then take younger boys to that boy, whilst he does things to that child. And thus the vicious cycle continues. And the only way to stop the cycle is to take the children out. And there's no need for these children to suffer like this. All they need is a place to go. If they had a place to go, somewhere safe, where these men can't get to them, they wouldn't have this problem. Often, due to the involvement of the fallen nature, the alien slave technology, however we point at this issue within the human body and mind, the image of God separates mankind from God. And this is a huge pill for people to swallow. The last days I spent time with some amazing human beings new to my life. People God has sent to help us. And I think I can say friends. And we spent 2 days deep in conversation. And the conversation was an unraveling, ultimately, of the image of God. And just as they were departing, I received a message from a doctor who works for the charity in Tanzania. And he was informing me that a little girl who 8 years ago, I was actually the one to find her. Her name was Elizabeth. And when I found her, she was 2 years old, and I have a very powerful memory that she was clasping onto my finger, and I promised her that she would be okay. For she was addicted to alcohol. Her mother was a lost soul, and we tried but could not salvage or save her. Elizabeth passed away last night. And the whole thing culminated. First of all, of course, I am sad, for she will be missed, And yet I'm also happy, for she's now outside of this matrix. And yet that which I speak about, the fallen nature, the moon matrix, the fallen world, it can easily lead you to feel this place has no value. The war, the suffering, what's the point? Yet when somebody beautiful in your life is no longer in your life, you grieve, and that's the evidence that beneath all of the fallenness, the brokenness of our species in this world, that there is value. Otherwise we would not grieve. We would just immediately celebrate that they were liberated. Elizabeth was blessed because we had fulfilled our duty given to us by Creator. And that is sometimes to simply love these children until it is time to hand them back into the loving arms of that Creator. That's it. The whole call on my life has resulted in that. To be a provider and protector and have that ability I hold as a man, animated by the love of God, which is a love that knows only unity and compassion and no separation. All religion is only there to bring us to there. It is there to bring us away from the illusion of separation, whereby thought animates thought, and therefore fear can animate thought, can animate intelligence, instead of the divine connection to all things in the heart of the universe, pouring forth all creation, infinite potential and free will. If we allow that to animate our intelligence and thought, the manifestations of creation that we are able to partake in will mimic the heart of God. They will represent the heart of God. If we lose that connection, our intelligence will be harnessed by the fallen ones as a resource, for it will create based on a bedrock of fear and separation, or anger and malice. And the subsequent result of that energetically is that suffering is born. And the suffering of the light of God caught inside these bodies is a preferred drug of a certain fallen force. The only reason religions are built is because men, prophets, messiahs connect to the place where the divine will fills every cell of their body, and they recognize love. In Islam it says, if you kill but one man, you kill the whole of humanity. Love, unity. Yeshua was clear. Love your enemies. Love, unity. Even those elements of unity that, due to the fallen nature, the slave technology within them, becomes opposed to you, a harmer of you, you are to love them, for they are still unity. And only the elevation of those who fall can return us back to that which is palatable, a fallen world which is manageable, where war and rape and murder does not reign supreme as it has in our history. The image of God that religions create is not the connection that those men and women found. And so the enemy does not care how much your mind is filled with the religious imagery, symbology, words and paraphernalia. Even if the message is clear, one of compassion, love and forgiveness. The fallen ones, it is irrelevant to them. In the core of man you have a system that is creating images of what it is. It is grabbing at reality due to its separation and forming an image of self. Religion comes in and says, this is the image of God. This story that you are supposed to hear and allow it to point your awareness back to freedom is not there for that system, that hardware inside your body to analyze and form an identity with. The story was there to point you to the awareness you are beyond that system that generates an identity. And therefore, a man can enter religion, read everything about compassion and love, but not recognize this hardware within them, this slave tech from the fall. And it will build an image of God. But that image of God is a creation of human thought once again. And the living God is not a thought. It is not an image. It is not a symbol. It is a vibrant, potent connection of a love that has no condition, here and now. And you cannot describe it. Words fail me. You are lovingly aware of all things and ready for that force of love to determine the direction of your life. That's it. It's so simple that the mind struggles to grasp the simplicity of faith, walking by faith and not sight. Religion, if it is failing to show you that hardware inside you, is not bringing us back to a species whereby here in this moment, through this parcel of time, you are driven by the will of unconditioned love. Meaning you can forgive almost instantaneously. Meaning you can access a place where you love a stranger with the same potency that you love your family. None of this love based on condition. That means the love that you offer your children is a lesser love than the one I speak of. For that love is conditioned based on relationship. Still valid, still powerful, still valuable. But not as clear, not as pure as the love of Christ that we can all allow into our being. For that love loves your child without the condition of relationship. And that love is for your child and every man and every child you meet. And it's accessible. I know. As I know the place, and I have watched as I have brought people to see it by untangling the image of God to actually be in the presence of God. And so the image of God is not God. The image of God will lead you, perhaps not today, but in future, the hardware within you that makes you feel the image of God your thoughts have created is that which you relate to no Creator, will find a way, as it is of its very nature a state of separation from that love without condition, the living God, here now, the awakened state, to condition love. I cannot love you because you hurt somebody and I won't forgive it. I cannot love you because you're not the same religion as me. You don't look the same as me. You hurt me. I can't love you. This space in consciousness that you can move into, it won't allow any of that game. It will not allow it, and that's where religion was meant to bring us. But you are trying to bring people to a place which is image-free. It is label-free. It is control-free. It is calculation-free. And you're trying to do it with words and labels. This hardware inside you will obsessively create identities based upon the world and based upon memory. So your ancestors, our ancestors, they have created the image of such a thing as Israel. We have war tearing around in the Middle East yet again. The image of Israel was once not existing. It was brought into existence through human thought. There are those who are willing to adopt that identity to the degree they are willing to die for it and willing to kill for it. An identity that was created through the records and memories of our ancestry, and ultimately a concept that was created to help us to function in a society, a nation, a nationality, a people. There are those, due to this identity that the hardware adopts, the fallen nature within us is that which creates identities, for it does not realize its true identity is that of a being who can be organized and driven by the living God, here and now, the superconsciousness of the present moment. There, when you find home, you have no need to generate these identities and attach to them. There are those who are willing to kill those who hold that identity, for they are unable to forgive the image of what that identity collectively has done. They are willing to hate this idea in thought of something like an Israeli, Israelite, based on what they were programmed by their parents, for example. You see, these identities are problematic. They are separation. And I use Israel with purpose, for the word Israel seems to be a composition of 3 ancient Egyptian gods. And the ancient Egyptians were very clear in their symbology that we must overcome the flesh. And this is why they have the eye of Horus, which is the pineal gland. We must overcome the flesh was part of what they were saying. Yeshua said, overcome flesh and be in spirit. They may have been attempting to attain that in a different way, but they were attaining it. That was the road they were aiming for. In Egypt you had Isis and Ra. You also had the Mithra bull cult around in Egypt. They had El, which became Elohim. Now Elohim is a peculiar word, as I've mentioned recently, for it seems to represent the powerful ones. But in the etymology of words like Raphael, Michael. El was representing the God force, the human organism, the human life, and soul within it, animated by the divine will, not the mind. Israel, Isis, Ra, Elohim. Isis is the feminine, the spirit. Ra is the masculine, the mind. And El, the Elohim, is the animated human, the intelligence, speech, actions animated by the God force. The word itself seems to point at going beyond the duality where mind is master, the unity. And this is why in the Bible, Jacob is no longer called Jacob, but Israel. And he says, I have seen God face to face, and I call that place Peniel. The Egyptians had the eye. Jacob is speaking of Peniel, and his name is Israel, a composition of masculine, feminine, and the human being animated by the divine will. And therefore this is nothing to do with an Israelite, it's an example. That we were shown that these identities are a pittance in the eyes of God. And even the Apostle Paul, himself a Jew. Now this has nothing to do with Jews. The Apostle Paul could have been a Hindu and I would be using the same example. The Apostle Paul as a Jew said, a Jew is not a Jew who is one outwardly, and nor is a circumcision outward, but of the heart and the spirit. And a Jew is also a one that is inwardly a Jew. The identity of a Jew in his words here has nothing to do with a birthright, nothing to do with adopting the images of a nationality which are land masses and lines created by human thought. It has nothing to do with the hardware of the alien slave tech generating an image of self, be it a Christian or a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Jew or a Muslim. A Jew is not a Jew outwardly, for these identities are irrelevant. Circumcision is not outward, it's cutting away the lower nature, cutting away the flesh, as it is simplistically worded. But the flesh is a complex thing. And so the image of an Israelite, the image of a Jew, in the eyes of those who awaken, are reborn, as Apostle Paul was, seemingly from his writings he was, is the human who has united that the mind is no longer master, and therefore the image of God the mind has created is no longer relevant. But the living God here and now in the heart of man is that which is worthy of being called, in his words, a Jew or a servant of God. And therefore the image of God is not God. And that is why today, aside from the horrendous events taking place in Gaza, many more children than that will die, not in a bomb blast or in injury, but a slow, prolonged, lonely death. Both are terrible. But children like Elizabeth, right now, are tied up in the dark, starved, suffering, fever, can't speak, can't get up and walk, hasn't known a smile, hasn't known love. This is real. I've seen this. I've taken such children into our family, hundreds of them. And those children, so the parents don't fall victim to the infanticide laws, have food poured in their mouth once a day to keep them alive. And they live like that, sometimes for 10, 15 years, and then die. And some of those parents are attending church, are attending the mosque, and they have an image of God in the hardware of the slave technology. And they have an identity that they formed, and God is included within there. But no one ever told them. It is the falling away of that identity that will make you a being of love. And that will express in your nurturing and caring today, or it may express in your ability to provide and protect. But it will express. And so these invisible children, and the children all around the world, wherever it's happening, however it's happening, be they dying in an airstrike, or be they dying in these long, prolonged states of hell on earth, like the children that we are trying desperately to find, are surrounded by billions of people who have the image of God, but not God. Because nobody told them to look at the hardware and work out how to put the hardware's noise to sleep, so that the source of all creation, its unity, its love, its compassion, that which I often label the Christ, can animate them, can satisfy the fear, the struggle, the turmoil, the separation within them, and lighten their hearts to a state of life which is far more joyous and palatable. In short, religion is often, not always, failing us, because the image of God is not humble. The man who loves the image of God, his thoughts created, is not humble. The man with no image of self, however fleeting, and it's a work, you must find your practice to stay there, but a man with no image of self has no will, has no reason to condition love, and is left like a child, like a baby, with this loving awareness and no clue how to live their life, and so return to faith, awaiting the divine will. Those who love the image that their thoughts have created about God, they tend to put that image in the driving seat of life. The religious identities, the spiritual identities, the political. And when it drives life, it is incapable of the type of love I speak of. Its love must filter through thought and relationship. But reckless love knows no thought and relationship. And that's where martyrs are born. Those who find that love. The world needs us to wake up. A Christian, a Jew, a Muslim is not one outwardly. A child of God is not one decorated in religious paraphernalia and symbology and imagery, although they can be. But for them to be so, their heart must be transformed. And that's not something the mind can do for you. It's something that God can do. When you truly surrender in that very simplistic state, that simplistic teaching, to be lovingly aware of this moment, free of any determination and direction and desire to some degree, and awaiting the divine will to determine how it will use the shape and form that you formally identified as whichever identity the alien slave hardware within you, the fallen hardware, had created. here and now, love God without the word God. There you'll know the living God. If not, we'll continue raging war. Children will continue to suffer. It's completely unnecessary. Thank you everyone who makes our village possible. Elizabeth knew love in a world where some children never know 1 minute of it. And they are the children that need you to say, I love you, and I don't need anything from you, and I don't want anything from you. And religion is supposed to make you a human who knows that love when they meet everybody, be they someone suffering or an enemy who has made you suffer. And I'm not seeing evidence that religion is managing that so well for the majority. Stand with compassion. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. You think you're right, you think that they're wrong. Fine, you're both sinners. Stand in compassion, forgive, move forward in compassion. Animate your intelligence with that. Out beyond your ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field, I'll meet you there. Exactly the same message. Love. God bless, guys.